Welcome back to our videos on Introduction of Angle Relationships. This is part 2. If you haven't watched part 1, you want to go back ahead and do that before you go ahead and watch part 2. If you watched part 1, let's go ahead and get started. So picking up where we left off, we're going to be talking about finding missing measure. Last time we were doing this, we had only one angle to find. This time, we have a whole group of angles to find based on the one angle that they gave us and our knowledge of angle relationships. So in this case, on the first side, they're missing 3 angles and they've given us just one, 52. So we have to use our knowledge of angle relationships at 52 degrees to figure out the other 3 missing angles. So I'm going to start with angle B. I'm going to start with angle B because I noticed that 52 is across from angle B and that they're formed by intersecting lines, which makes them vertical angles. And if they're vertical angles, they're congruent and they're equivalent. So 52 degrees for one means 52 degrees for the other. So angle B is 52 degrees. Now let's take a look at angle A or angle C. I noticed that I'm going to go with angle A. They're on a straight line, so 52 and A are on a straight line, which means they're going to equal 180 degrees, and that means they are supplementary. So if I take my 180 degrees minus 52, I'll know what's left over. In that case, it's 128 degrees. So I know that angle A equals 128 degrees. So now with angle C, I can notice that angle A and angle C are across from each other, and they're formed by intersecting lines, which means they're going to be equal, they're going to be congruent, because they're vertical angles, so if A is 128 degrees, C is also 128 degrees. So let's fill in the things that we're missing in our boxes. So C is 128 degrees, B is 52 degrees, and A is 128 degrees. So that takes care of that one. Let's take a look to the one to the right. So the one on the right, the only thing they gave us was 27 degrees, and they're missing 4 different angles, so we've got to figure out what is missing. So I'm going to start with angle F, because angle F has a right angle marker. So I know right away that that one is going to be worth 90 degrees. So now I have to pick another angle to find, and I notice that angle E with 27 form another right angle. So I know that those are going to be complementary. If I take my 90 degrees, and I subtract the 27 degrees, the amount that's left over will tell me what is there for angle E. So 90 minus 27 is 63 degrees, so I know that angle E is 63 degrees. So now, taking a look at angle G, that's across from angle E, so they're across from each other. They're formed by intersecting lines, which makes them vertical angles, so they are congruent and equivalent. So if E is 63, G is also 63 degrees. So that leaves me with just D to find, and I can see that D and G make a straight line, so they're going to be 180 degrees. So supplementary, I'm going to do 180 degrees minus 63, so the amount left over is 117 degrees, and that's going to be angle D. So now I just need to fill in the boxes, and I know that E is at 63, F is 90, G is 63, and D is 117 degrees. Make sure that your paper looks like mine. Let's go on to the next one. So here we are again looking at finding missing measure, and they've given us another couple shapes telling us to find all angles. I want you to try this one on your own. I know it looks hard, but remember what you know about angle relationships and you should be able to figure out what's missing. Go ahead and pause the video now, try it on your own, then press play again to see if you are correct. How did you do? Were you able to figure out all the missing measures? Notice I used a few tricks there, and if you weren't able to get them, maybe you can copy down what I've done. So for the first one specifically, I noticed that all 3 equaled 180 degrees, and one was already a right angle. Since that one was already a right angle, I knew what that was. I could just add that to the 64. That would give me 154. Take that away from the 180, and what's left over gives you the far right angle. On the other side, they gave you a couple 90s, so that was nice, and then everything else was a vertical angle. So as long as you did this 90 minus 19 for the complementary angle to figure out the 71, everything else was a vertical angle and didn't require any math. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we're doing next. Alright, let's continue with finding angle relationships. However, this time we're not going to be given the angle measures. We're already going to have the measures, and we need to identify the relationships. So in this case, we're looking for things that are adjacent, we're looking for vertical, we're looking for supplementary. So let's take a look at what we're doing. So first it says to name all the angles that are adjacent to angle B. So I can see that angle B has two angles adjacent to it because they share a side, they share a vertex. Those two angles are angle A and angle C. So I'm going to list angle A and angle C. Don't forget that when you're writing down angles, you make a little angle symbol next to your letter. I know it looks like less than or greater than, but it is an angle symbol in this case. We're talking about angle A and angle C. The next thing we need to do is talk about all the pairs of angles that are supplementary angles. So angles that add up to 180 degrees. So I'm looking for angles on that straight line. So I know that C and D are on a straight line, so 128 plus 52 does equal 180 degrees. So C and D are supplementary angles. Now let's take a look for another pair. So here again I've got A and D on a straight line this time. So D again getting involved, but yeah, when you add up with A, 128 plus 52 does equal 180 degrees. So A and D are supplementary angles. So looking around now here, if I have A and B, 128 and 52 degrees, also equal 180 degrees. So A and B are supplementary angles. And last, I've got B and C. Does B and C equal 180 degrees? Yes, they do. So I've got angle B, and I need to get another angle C because I've ran out. So there we go. Angle B and C also equal 180 degrees. So now I've got to name all the pairs of vertical angles. So those are angles that are across from each other and are congruent, and they have the same measure. So I notice that B and D are across from each other. That's a good start. They are created by intersecting lines. Also a good start. And 52 is equal to 52. So B and D are vertical angles. And again, I've run out, so I need to get myself another D. There we go. So B and D are vertical angles. However, it looks like A and C are across from each other, so they are also vertical angles. They are equal to each other, and they were formed by intersecting lines, so angle A and C are also vertical angles. So there we figured out all of our relationships. Let's head on to the next one. So here again, we've got another group of angles, and it's asking us to find a whole bunch of different relationships, but I want you to try this one on your own, remembering what you know about angle relationships so far. So go ahead and pause the video now, fill in all the angle relationships you know, then press play again to see if you are right. So how did you do? Were you able to figure out all the different matches and relationships? Notice that angle F doesn't go with anything. Although it does add up to 90 degrees, it only adds up to 90 degrees by itself. So it's not complementary because it doesn't have a second angle with it. It's just one angle equal 90 degrees, which we call a right angle. So it is not complementary because it is only one angle, even though it equals 90 degrees. Check your answers. Then let's move on to something else. So here we're talking about more angle relationships. We've got a picture and we need to figure out all the angles that are adjacent to angle Z. So that's angles that share a side and have a vertex. And only one angle has a vertex and shares a side, and that is angle X. Next, we have to name all the pairs of complementary angles. So we're going to look for angles that equal 90 degrees. Now, although X does equal 90 degrees, it is just one angle by itself, so we can't say that it's complementary to 90 degrees. We only can add up 64 and 26 to give us the other 90 degree angle relationship there. So Z and Y are the complementary angles. Let's take a look at the next one. So in this one, it wants us to find angle relationships. We're only looking for vertical angles and complementary angles. So I want you to pause the video now and try this on your own and find only complementary and vertical angle relationships. How did you do? Were you able to match up all the different types of relationships? Notice that although the angles are not necessarily adjacent, meaning they're not right next to each other, that doesn't mean that they aren't complementary. So for example, when we're talking about S and P, they're not next to each other. They don't share a side, they don't share a vertex. However, 71 plus 19 does equal 90, so they are complementary because they equal 90 degrees. Check your answers, and then let's move on to the last one. So in this last one here, we're looking for angle relationships, and again, we've got the same picture as we had in the last slide. However, this time we're looking for the supplementary angles and an adjacent angle to n. So if I'm looking for supplementary, I'm equal for angles that equal 180 degrees, and it can only be 2. So although we could add up a whole bunch of angles that equal 180 degrees here, we still only can use 2 in order to make it supplementary. So in this case, the only 2 angles that add up to supplementary are the two 90s. So 90 plus 90 is going to equal an 80. So there we go. R and M are the only 2 that equal 180. Then we need to name all the angles adjacent to angle N. So again, sharing a side, sharing a vertex. So the only 2 angles that share a side and a vertex with angle N are angle P and angle M. This brings us to the end of all of our introduction to angles notes. Hopefully you've gotten a lot through part 1 and part 2. If you haven't watched part 1, you should go back and do that. Otherwise, I hope you liked this video. If you did, throw us a thumbs up. If you loved this video, throw us a sub. See you in the next one.